Hey again, people. Well, this is so I'm gonna post this in the morning, which means the jury has been in deliberation on this murder trial since I think yesterday at, I want to say, like 2 p.m. is when they gave their closing arguments. I think they stayed till 5 or 6. So they deliberated for 3 or 4 hours yesterday. Now the jury has been in seclusion, lockdown, protective custody, whatever you want to call it, and so they haven't read or anything. So when you lock a jury up like that, they allow the jury to work as long as they want to, because they know the sooner they reach a result, the quicker they can go home. That's why some people don't like when they restrict jurors, because it almost motivates them. They're so tired of being locked up, sometimes they just want to reach a decision just to get out of there. And it kind of puts justice a little in the back seat. But that's for a different discussion. I want to talk about this Amber trial and her testimony. Now, I said I was going to do an evaluation of her testimony. She gave a lot of testimony, and the two main things that I got out of her testimony was, one, she admitted that she wanted to kill him, which I don't think she did. No cop is taught to kill people. We are taught to shoot center mass and stop the threat. We are never taught to kill someone. Now, any reasonable person with 2 brain cells can figure out, if you're shooting somebody with center mass, has multiple rounds, the odds of you killing them is pretty damn good. So, but are you intending to kill them? No. What all cops are taught to say is, I was shooting to stop the threat. I shot until I stopped the threat. So we are not shooting to kill. Although killing sometimes is the only thing that stops the threat, we don't shoot to kill, we shoot to stop the threat. And as a civilian, if you get involved in a shooting, I do not recommend you saying I shot to kill him. Okay? I don't recommend you saying I was shooting at his pinky toe and happened to hit him right square between the eyes. I just don't think you need to say that. If you're really in a crisis and you're shooting in self-defense, you're going to shoot fast and you're going to shoot center mass, because a lot of things are happening and the odds of you hitting is slim to none and slim left town. So, I mean, there's a lot of issues. But anyway, back to this Amber Guyger trial. I thought the closing arguments, and I watched the closing arguments, it was all live on let's see, right here, on their YouTube channel, WFAA, on their YouTube channel. They were live streaming. And tomorrow morning, they will be live streaming the verdict or anything that goes on in the courtroom. And what's going to go on tomorrow is the jury may have some questions. They may forward some questions to the judge. If the judge may get both attorneys in the courtroom and ask them the question, each of them will say whether they think it should be answered, it shouldn't be answered. Each of them will say how it should be answered. They'll all agree on what answer, if any, to give them, and then that will be the answer the jury gets. Now, the jury doesn't know this is going on unless you're savvy and you understand courtroom procedures. So, but when the defense, or when the prosecutor got her to admit that she tried to kill him, and she didn't want to say it, he just got her rattled, and he was attacking her. And again, if y'all want me to do a video, tell me in the comments that you want me to evaluate her custody, because it'll probably be 4 or 5, if not 6, 15-minute videos, and it's going to take me a while to do, and I don't want to do it if there's only like 3 people that want it. Also, people are saying they're not getting notified. Someone made a comment that if you don't like videos, then YouTube does not notify you. If you don't like videos that you watch, when that poster posts videos because you aren't liking, you don't get notified. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but somebody put that, and I kind of went, well, that would probably explain, because the people that hate watch me, and as soon as my video posts, within seconds, I have 2 or 3 downvotes, because you have these pathetic people with no lives that their goal is to get up in the morning and downvote my video. Somehow it makes them feel good. Okay, whatever. I'm glad I can make somebody feel good. But they always seem to get notified, because it's the same 2 or 3 people that downvote immediately. So because they're downvoting, I think they're getting notified. So those that aren't getting notified, if you're not liking my video, that may be why. And anyway, liking my video also helps keep YouTube off my back, because the higher percentage of my likes and the more likes I get, the less likely YouTube is going to listen to the whiners that say, he's mean and he's aggressive and he's a male and we don't like him and he picks on every... Shut up, freaking crybabies. Anyway, I digress. So, now remember I said when this trial started, and I'm going to get in this video, they only gave them manslaughter or murder. Those are the only two things they can rule on. They can either find guilty or not guilty on murder, or they can find guilty or not guilty on manslaughter, or they can vote to acquit, where everybody votes, or they can have what's called a hung jury or a mistrial, to where some vote guilty and some vote not guilty. So those are the only options that are coming out of this. I don't know if they're going to give... Usually quick verdicts are not good for the prosecution. Because if somebody's going to put somebody in prison and they find them guilty, there's usually a little bit more talk, a little bit more arguing, a little bit more convincing. But if nobody's convinced on the jury and they get in there and go, man, this is a waste of our damn time, let's vote not guilty and get the hell out of here, then it's usually pretty quick. So if they come back with a verdict tomorrow, I would lean more on she's not getting convicted. And of course, all the civil attorneys are out there trying to stir up unrest and saying if they don't come back with murder, it's not justice, they're letting her off. They're already setting up the riots and looting and the typical Dallas liberal left-wing shithole, let's go out and destroy all working people's business because we don't have a life and we just want to claim poor us, we're victims. But I digress. Let's get back to this. So on the appeal, I said that there was 3 appeal things that I saw very harshly that I think they could appeal on. One is the defense wanted a change of venue. And a change of venue is when something is so popularized and so in the media and so inflamed and there's so much outrage that you can't get a fair trial in the area. So she said, no, we're not having a change of venue. I think that was a mistake. I think she should have had a change of venue, but she didn't. And I think to counter that, she's going to say, well, I sequestered the jury and I locked them up and put them on lockdown, and therefore they weren't affected by the news media, so it doesn't matter anyway. I don't believe that. But anyway, here's what you get when you Google Amber Guyger trial. Look at all these headlines. Innocent mistake, murder, fate, jury, closing arguments, deliberating murder, and closing arguments, murder trial, heads of the jury, Amber trial, fate handled, deliberations continue, Amber trial, murder. Look at all these different headlines on this trial. This is getting national attention, and they have plastered this woman's face, making her guilty before the trial even started, much less after it started. I mean, this whole trial has been nothing but a kangaroo court as far as I'm concerned. I've never seen this judge, people are like, oh, she's being really fair. She's not fair at all. She let the defense attack and brutally badger this witness on a stand. And the defense never objected and the judge never looked out for her. She allowed things that helped the prosecution, and she disallowed things like the case investigator saying, I don't think she committed a crime. Oh, I don't want the jury hearing that. We'll let her hear that you went out and did the investigation. We'll let her hear everything you found that can be used against her, but something that can be used for her, the judge ruled, I'm not allowing the jury to hear. Another reason for a mistrial. And there was another case for mistrial where they messed with the expert testimony. She absolutely ruled that the expert testimony could not talk about reasonableness of Amber's actions. That's a Supreme Court ruling. This judge can't be overriding the Supreme Court just because it's her courtroom and she's got a nice pearl necklace and she wears a black robe and suddenly she's got a big trial, so now she's going to say, I don't care what the Supreme Court said. That's just a good rule, grounds for appeal. But, you know, when you Google Amber Guyger's trial, look at this. Headline after headline after headline. The family hating, Black Lives Matter, there's going to be riots, judge is doing this, she's guilty, she's having an affair, it wasn't, she knew, how could she be so stupid, there's no way she couldn't miss the word, man, he was eating ice cream. This is the biggest case the Dallas prosecutor literally made this case on the guy was eating ice cream, so you should find her guilty. I mean, that's pretty much his whole crutch of his case. So, I mean, if you don't think this trial is popularized, if I was a defense attorney filing appeal, I'd be making a copy of every one of these articles every day and showing what you get when you Google and all these headlines on this trial from all the different papers over and over and over, how they have plastered this woman's face, making her guilty. And this is just page 1. If I went to page 2, it'd be another page. But anyway, let's get into how they charged her on the 2 different things. So this attorney does a pretty good job at telling the difference between manslaughter and murder. So according to this law firm, murder in Texas, and it's not the same in every state. So everybody's like, well, they should have charged criminal negligent homicide, vehicular, alcohol related. I mean, look, every state has a bunch of different ways to charge. In Texas, it's pretty simple. In Texas, you got murder or you got manslaughter. That's it. If you kill somebody, those are the 2 charges you're getting. So if you get charged for murder, it says here murder charges, severity, capital murder versus murder. There's 2 distinctions in the murder. In order to be charged with murder, a defendant must have knowingly. Knowingly means specific intent. You intended. The defense flat out lied in its closing argument, which is probably another reason for a mistrial or a retrial. He said there's no intent for murder. She doesn't have to have intent to commit murder. I think he's absolutely full of crap. Right here it says the defendant must knowingly, willingly. Those are all specific intent. Those are not by accident. Knowing and willingly cause the death of another person. The biggest swing factor between murder and manslaughter involves the intent of the perpetrator. There is absolutely, she had no intent. Even though the prosecutor got her to say on a stand, which was a stupid reply on her part, didn't you mean to kill him? Didn't you shoot to kill him? And after she was badgered a few times, she went, yes. And then as soon as he got her to say yes, he brought it up 3 other times. Didn't you already testify that you meant to kill him? And I mean, he just had her frustrated. I can't believe her attorneys didn't object. I mean, they just let her get beat up. But anyway, she didn't mean to kill him. She was never trained to kill him. She misspoke on the stand because she was being badgered by the prosecution, and her attorney failed to protect her, in my opinion. Okay, in order to be charged willingly and knowingly, the biggest distinction between murder and manslaughter, and remember, this is Texas, involves the intent of the perpetrator. The defendant intended to cause serious bodily harm and death and intended to commit a felony other than manslaughter that resulted in a death. She had no intent to do anything. This is a mistaken fact. She went to the wrong apartment. She didn't know it. She saw somebody inside. She thought somebody was in her apartment. She thought her life was in danger, and she went to deadly force. A key factor here, which is nobody disputed, because Texas is pretty good on the castle doctrine, if somebody's in your house, you can shoot them. If they aren't supposed to be there, you didn't invite them in, you can shoot them. So had this, in fact, been her apartment, there would be no crime. That's why the Texas Ranger testified, who was black, I might add, because everybody's like, oh, it's probably some white guy. It was a black guy. He says she committed no crime because he did not find any intent, and it was a mistake of fact, and she went to the wrong apartment. And had it been her apartment, there would be no crime. Therefore, since she thought it was her apartment, there's no crime. Now, people are crying about, well, you can't just say if you thought, if that's the case. They do that all the time, people. Every day, cops are killing people because they reached in their pocket, because they thought they had a gun and it was a cell phone, because they made a quick movement under the seat and the cop shot and killed them. Those are all things that fall under, you know what? I thought he had a gun. Even though he didn't have a gun, doesn't matter. When I shot him, I thought he had a gun. Amber entered this house, thought she was in danger, and she shot him. Doesn't matter that he didn't have a gun and he wasn't. This is like so established law, and everybody just wants to ignore that for some reason now. But anyway, the distinction between capital murder resulted. Some criteria of capital murder includes killing a police or firefighter. I don't know how the hell a firefighter got caught into that. I mean, police are out there risking their lives. How did a firefighter get sucked into that? What, are we going to start, unless killing police officer, firefighter, politician, mayor, public official, parking meter? Why don't we just say it's capital murder if you kill a government thug, and if you kill some pesky citizen paying taxes, it's not? But I digress. I'm sorry. All right, let's get have been paid to murder. That's murder for hire. Usually lying in wait is capital murder. Planning, paying someone, killing more than one person. All those go to capital murder. So let's go into manslaughter. Many states have 2 different forms of manslaughter. Voluntary and involuntary. Not in Texas. Texas combines the 2 charges and has enhancement penalties for certain aggravating factors. So there's aggravating factors and there's usually mitigating factors. To be convicted of manslaughter in Texas, a defendant must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, very, very high standard, beyond a reasonable doubt, meaning that if there's any doubt, meaning that if maybe she went to the wrong apartment, meaning that if she didn't recognize that it wasn't her apartment, meaning that she was tired and she didn't see, meaning that her key fit and the door opened so she didn't know. All those things are not beyond a reasonable doubt that she went there and tried to kill somebody. But anyway, beyond a reasonable doubt to recklessly cause the death. Recklessly is another term. If you're doing something reckless, they have to prove that you weren't reasonable. So in this whole trial, they kept talking about the reasonableness. She was acting reasonable. 30% of the people that live there went to the wrong apartment. It's very reasonable that somebody goes to the wrong apartment. It's not like an isolated incident never happened before. Then we would be able to question reasonable, but reasonable and recklessly needs to be proven by the defense or by the prosecution beyond a reasonable doubt. There's no way they prove that she recklessly went to this house for kicks to shoot and kill somebody. It just didn't happen. So I agree with Texas Ranger. She didn't commit a crime within Texas law. Yes, I know somebody died. Yes, I know she entered someone's house and killed him, and the guy was innocent, and he shouldn't be dead. But things happen like that all the time. Somebody backs out of their driveway, and a kid's picking up a ball, and they run over him. They don't send them to prison and charge them with murder. It was a mistaken fact. The person was backing out of their driveway. They didn't see the child. And this is a case I worked on in Hawaii. A kid was on a skateboard, kneeling down, pushed himself down a sidewalk. Mom's backing out of her house. The kid shot underneath so she couldn't see him in the mirrors. She didn't do anything wrong. She backed up, ran the kid over, and killed him. She was not charged because it was an accident. There was no intent. She wasn't out doing something wrong. And that's the whole defense for Amber is she wasn't doing anything wrong. She was going to her apartment. She was tired. She made a mistake on the wrong floor, wrong apartment, which a lot of other people did, which makes it reasonable. And if she had been in her apartment, what she did would have been ruled justified. So, you can argue that I'm protecting the cop and I'm bootlicking and whatever. When the shit first came out, I cracked on her and said, there's something more. She knows the guy. There's no way she could be that stupid. Well, she was. And after they explained it, it made sense. But anyway, let's see. Manslaughter, involuntary, state-specific crime, intoxication manslaughter. They made one for alcohol because, of course, Mothers Against Drunk Driving want anybody that drives a car who freaking, somehow splash of alcohol splashed on them when someone else got a drink. They want them going to jail for life. Which is reserved when a death is caused by someone who is impaired by drugs. Not a factor, not a case. She took a blood test. A lot of people were saying, did they blood test her? Yes, she did take a blood test. They took a felony draw and she was clean. No drugs and no alcohol. Which again, proves she wasn't being reckless. Which again proves that she wasn't had any malice or negligence on her part. This charge often applies to impartial or impaired motorists. All manslaughter charges are second-degree felonies. Carry a prison sentence of 2 to 20. Intoxicated manslaughter may be man and sentence. Both murder and manslaughter are serious crimes. So this is just basic to this law firm right here. Who, let me give these guys credit for doing this. This law firm put this up. And if you look at this, the penal code for Texas, Chapter 19, criminal homicide. This gives the type of criminal homicide. A person commits homicide when he intentionally, knowingly, recklessly, and with criminal negligence causes the death of another. They did not find any criminal negligence interactions. There was no recklessness, although I would say it was close to recklessness, but as long as she thought she was in her apartment, there was no recklessness. She would have been totally justified. She didn't do it knowingly and intentionally. Now, the prosecution's going to say, well, she said on the stand she meant to kill her. Yeah, but she didn't go there to kill him. She says she meant to kill him, which she should have said is I meant to stop the threat because I was in fear of my life when I saw somebody inside and I told him to show my hands and he got up and he was pissed, which is reasonable. I'm not saying the guy was wrong. I mean, he was sitting in his house doing marijuana, eating ice cream. All they want to talk about is eating ice cream. They don't want to mention he was doing marijuana. But so all this is the guy didn't do anything wrong. He shouldn't have been shot. But he reacted like a lot of certain people react with the cops. is he got up, started yelling, and started to approach her, even though she had a gun out and she was yelling, "Show me your hands," and she was in full police uniform. Let's see. Adequate cause means common. Anyway, if you want to look up the code, I don't see any way, shape, or form they could find her guilty of murder. And if they do, I absolutely see a huge appeal and an overturn, and there'll be another trial, or the DA will try to cut a deal saying, "I got you once, I can get you again, you better plead," whatever. They'll be game playing. I was totally unimpressed with the prosecution. That DA was a complete jerk. He was unprofessional. He was attacking. He was arrogant. It wasn't about, these are the facts. Their whole case was about smearing Amber. She had an affair, so you can't believe her. She shot a guy eating ice cream. She must be evil. She didn't see a red mat. She must have did it on purpose. I mean, it was all about a smear campaign. It was nothing about the law. And they brought up all this stuff that she did afterwards. Well, she didn't give first aid, and she deleted her boyfriend, and she texted her boyfriend, and she deleted it, and look at what she... None of that matters. Nothing matters in a murder trial what you do afterwards. That has nothing to do with what happened before. What happened before she shot and when she shot is the only thing on trial here, and the prosecution made it all about texting and what she did and why she didn't use CPR, and didn't she have CPR training, and why didn't she use a radio, and why didn't she... I mean, they just threw everything they could against the wall hoping something stuck with a dumb jury. So hopefully the jury's up on it. I think they ought to find her not guilty, only because that's the law. This is a mistake of fact. And had the fact that she's mistaken on a wrong apartment been right, she would be justified. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. You can watch it on WFAA. It's going to be live, and I don't think they're going to get a verdict tomorrow, but you never know. If they do, I'll probably think that's a good thing for Amber. Anyway, the longer they last, the more questions they ask, the more it means they're kind of working toward a decision, and they're trying to convince some jurors to change their mind and some jurors to come on their way. So that's when you get into they're leaning more toward convicting. And usually, I guarantee you, if this thing goes for like 5 days or 6 days, the prosecution will be wanting to cut a deal and say, "Hey man, why don't we cut a deal before they come back?" And that happens a lot when they think they're going to lose or they think they're going to win. Somebody wants to cut a deal. But we'll see how it goes. All right, we'll end that there.